Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Chee-Tash. My name is Chris, and today we got another JavaScript video for you. That sounds weird. We are the day, we win the day, like Chip Kelly said back at Oregon. Today we're going to be talking about destructuring, which is something a little bit older. It's not along the same paths of the last few videos we talked about objects, or not about objects, but about classes and object-oriented programming in JavaScript. I'm actually going to take it back to something that we did back in Chapter 4 with destructuring, because I've seen a lot of this just in my little time here learning React. Lots of destructuring in both what you name your variables when you call the, let's say, like your set state hook, and then also destructuring when you're importing in your hooks or whatever other libraries from React. I know React is a library too, but so I just thought just to give some quick examples of what destructuring is, and all you have to really think about, here's the next slide here. All you really think about here is that destructuring is just unpacking. This is from the Mozilla documentation. Destructuring makes it possible to unpack values from arrays or properties from objects into distinct variables. And essentially, think about what we do with binding/assigning. You've got a left-hand side and the right-hand side, and you're assigning things on the right-hand side to variable names on the left-hand side, right? So, oops, here we go. Let x equal 5. X is 5, right? That's printing off here. So an array destructuring, you're essentially doing the same thing, but you're unpacking it into, you could think of it as unpacking an array into a list, or unpacking like an object into a list of things. So if, let's say, I have let array equal to 1, 2, 3, right? And then I could do this. I could say let A and B equal to array. And then if I do A, just call A, print out A, it's printing out 1. If I do B, it's printing out 2. If I do C, well, it's not printing out anything because it's undefined, right? So what happened here? You're unpacking this array into your suitcase over here. And in your suitcase, you have two variables, A and B. A and B are going to be assigned to the same indexes that correspond in arrays. So A is the first index in your suitcase. It's going to be assigned to 1. B is the second item in your suitcase, and it's going to be assigned to 2. And notice we don't have a third index in here, even though there's a third index in your array, but we're not assigning that. But we totally could. We totally could do it separately. Let's see. You could totally do it like this. And it's the same thing, right? This highlighted portion is essentially the same thing as doing let A equal array at 0, right? Let C equal array at 2. It would be the same thing if I did it here. And we get 3. Right? So that's all this is just unpacking values into a suitcase, and the indexes of the variables in your suitcase are going to match up with the indexes in the array. Now, there are a couple cool things that you can do, like you can destructure, you can have default values when you destructure. So how would that look? let me see. Let's get rid of this. Let's keep that array. Let's get rid of this. Let's add another number here. Let's add 4. Okay, so now we have a 4th index in the array. 4th index in the array. We're assigning A, B, and C. So like we saw before, A is going to get 1, B is going to get 2, C is going to get 3. Let's have a D, which is going to get 4. But now what if we accidentally add a 5th variable, right? This isn't going to do anything for us because there are not 5 indexes. There is not a 5th index in this array, so this gets assigned to undefined. Well, what we could do is have a default variable in these cases. I actually just saw this with, I remember taking some TypeScript, doing some TypeScript tutorials, and I saw this. You can default types in your components. You could have like a default type. I believe it was a default type, but I've seen it with TypeScript before. So we could actually assign this a default of like maybe, let's say 10. So you could see here now that E is printing off 10 instead of undefined. So what this does is if there is nothing at this index in the array, in the thing that you want to unpack, it's going to default to the number that you assign it to in your suitcase, in your, gosh, what would this be? In your declaration. I guess you would call this side. Right? And you could do the same thing here. D equals 11. Now, when you print off D, what should you get? No, you should get 4 because there is a 4th index here, so it's not going to default to 11. So I thought that's pretty cool. What else can you do with array destructuring? Let me go to the next slide. You can parse an array return from a function. So this is essentially you're kind of doing the same thing in all of these. So let's say you have a function destructure function declaration, and all this is doing is returning an array 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, now again, you can do the same thing. A, B, C. Why did I do periods? There we go. I think because my arms are so far away from the keyboard to fit the microphone. Here we go. We assign this to the return value of destructure, so you have to call it with the parentheses. So now if I do A, you're still getting 1. B, you're still getting 2. C, you're still getting 3. Right? So it's essentially the same thing. Think of this destructure as the same thing as I had new array here, or like that variable array that I previously had. Now you're just, whatever's being returned from destructure, which is an array, you're assigning that to these variables. It's the same thing. It looks the same way. What else can you do with destructuring? Well, like I said, you can unpack from an object. So if I have this object, let user equal name me, Chris. Let age 30. And you can destructure an object. It's going to use slightly different syntax here. Instead of the square brackets, your suitcase is going to turn into curly brackets. Now you can pull out the properties individually. Name, age. Now when I say name, print off name, I can get my name and I can get my age. This is the same thing as if I did user.name. Now, you might look at this and say, well, this isn't really, I could just do this. I'm not renaming it, right? I'm not renaming this into something else. I'm just pulling out the value that's assigned to that property name, value that's assigned to that property age. But I thought this was kind of cool that you can then reassign these to different variable names. So you could actually say, hey, take the name property in user and then assign it to a variable called new name. And hey, take the age property from user and assign it to a new variable called new age. Now, when I try to print off new name, I'm getting my name, Chris. And when I print off new age, I'm getting 30, the property value, the value of the age property in the user object. So I thought that was kind of cool that you can do that with objects. What else can we do with destruction? Well, there's a lot of different things you can do. The last thing, let's talk about this rest operator. So if I go back and I have my array of 1, 2, 3, 4, and I want to destructure this, let's say A and B equals array, right? So we expect A to equal 1, B to equal 2, right? Well, what if, let's say we don't want to assign 3 and 4 to anything, to any individual variable. We want to assign that array of 3 and 4, that 3 and 4 to a new array. How would we do that? This is where we use the rest operator. And the rest operator is going to take whatever's left in the array, whatever's left in that thing that you're destructuring, and it's going to put it into an array. So what is the rest operator? It's these 3 dots and C. So now we have this variable C. Let's see what we get when we print this off. We get the array of 3 and 4 because it's assigning the rest of it to C, the rest of that array to C. The rest operator assigns the rest of the variables to the array. This would be the same now if I did D. So now C gets assigned to 3. What is D going to be? And I know what you're thinking. It's going to be 4, but specifically, it should be an array with 4 in it at the first index. So the rest operator takes the rest of the variables and puts them in a array. Even if it's just a single index like this 4, D does not equal 4. D equals an array with 4 at the first index. You catch me there? You can only use the rest operator at the end. I don't believe... let's see if I did this. You can't do rest operator at the beginning. It has to come, see right here, my error, comma is not permitted after the rest element. So you can't do it at the beginning there, just as an FYI. You can also ignore values, but for some reason, this just was not working in REPL when I was trying this. So if I do this, I don't think this was letting me. Yeah, this was not, cannot read properties of null. But technically, this should ignore the second index of this array, and I can show you this in the Mozilla documentation here, ignoring some returned values. So essentially, this is what I was trying to do. So you have empty commas. You have like an empty space where in between the commas of where you would usually put a variable. So array 1, 2, 3 is being returned when you call the f function. So A should be assigned to 1, B should be assigned to 3, but you're ignoring this other value there. You're not assigning it to anything. Now, if you do want to assign something to that second index, what I would do is I would just call, you could say const c equals f brackets at 1 at the first index to assign something to that too. And then look at here, you can also ignore all the return values. Now this would probably mean that you know how many indexes you have being returned, so you know how many commas to have in this. But just something else kind of cool with destructuring. And that's all I wanted to talk about today, guys. I know I went a little backwards, but I've been seeing a lot of destructuring just in while learning React, even though I haven't done a ton of React in these last few weeks. But something to think about and consider. I thought this was kind of cool. Using the REST operator, unpacking in your suitcase. Remember that, just you're unpacking the variables in your suitcase, whether that's a bracket suitcase, curly braces suitcase, or a square braces suitcase. And guys, that's going to do it for me. Thank you very much for listening this far. And let me know if you have any questions. I'll try to do some more JS videos. I know it's been a while. I keep saying that. But I'm close to being done with 1984, actually reading it. So hopefully I'll be pumping out more of those videos just to complete it faster. So thank you guys very much. My name is Chris. This has been Chee-Tash. Take care.